Fear and Trembling is a philosophical tract by Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, first published in 1843 under the pseudonym John of the Silence. The title is taken from a line from Philippians chapter 2, verse 12, a work of Christian philosophy. Fear and Trembling focuses on the incident in the Bible where Abraham was ordered to sacrifice his son Isaac, and examines Abraham's anxiety, fear, and philosophical crisis when he had to decide whether to take up the knife and fulfill God's orders or ignore them and prioritize his relationship with his family. The tract is seen as partly autobiographical in that it reflects Kierkegaard's relationship with Regine Olsen, his lover, whom he left to commit himself to his study of God. Considered one of the major works of existentialism, Fear and Trembling explores themes including the nature of faith, the love of man versus the love of God, and the fear that accompanies belief in God.
Fear and Trembling centers on the biblical story of Abraham. Abraham, who is childless, after 80 years, he prayed for a son. God granted his wish and Abraham had Isaac. 30 years later, God told Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac on Mount Moriah, and Abraham immediately complied to God's command. He took Isaac to the mountain and binded the boy to an altar. As he was about to kill his son, he was stopped by an angel, then a ram appeared. Abraham was prepared to kill his son, but at the last second, God spared Isaac and allowed Abraham to sacrifice the ram instead. Fear and Trembling includes 4 different retellings of the story, each with a slightly different viewpoint. In the first version, Abraham decided to kill Isaac in accordance with God's will. Abraham convinced Isaac that he's doing it by his own will, not by God's, which is a lie. But Abraham says to himself that he would rather have Isaac lose faith in his father than lose faith in God. In the second version, Abraham sacrificed the ram instead of Isaac. Even though God spared Isaac, Abraham's faith is shaken because God asked him to kill Isaac in the first place. In the third version, Abraham decided not to kill Isaac and then prays to God to forgive him for having thought of sacrificing his son in the first place. In the fourth version, Abraham can't go through with killing Isaac. Isaac begins to question his own faith due to Abraham's refusal to do what God commanded.
This painting is about the story of Abraham and Isaac, the ultimate test of faith. When Isaac became a young boy, God spoke to Abraham and commanded him to take his son to Mount Moriah and offer him as a sacrifice to God. This was God's test of Abraham's faith. Abraham loved his son very much, but did not hesitate to follow God's words, for he was a man whose faith in God was strong. As Abraham and his son reached the place where the sacrifice was to be performed, Isaac said to his father, "Father, where is the lamb that is to be sacrificed?" Abraham replied, "My son, God will provide the lamb." It is not known how eventually Abraham told his son that he was to be sacrificed, but Isaac courageously laid on the sacrificial place, ready to be sacrificed for God. As Abraham was taking out his knife, his hands were trembling. He was about to sacrifice his son when he heard the voice of God saying, "Abraham, stop! Do not hurt your son. You have proven your faith and shown how much you love me by willing to sacrifice your son for me. Therefore, I shall bless you and your family, and through you, I shall bless all the nations on earth." God also provided a lamb for the sacrifice. Abraham went home along with his son, and their hearts full of love and faith.
In conclusion, the painting shows the story in Genesis chapter 2, which shows Abraham and the binding of his only son, Isaac. Abraham's actions are truly absurd. We realize that faith is something we cannot explain or understand until we are the ones whose faith is being tested. Abraham's actions cannot be justified through ethical argument. He's literally murdering his own son. But those with faith and is called by God rejects the universal ethics and will achieve a direct relationship with God no matter what.
As stated on the discussion, a person can become a tragic hero through his own strength, but not the knight of faith. Seen on the illustration is a person who is in pain. This represents a tragic hero and thus the result of jumping on the dark stairs. This will measure the fate of the tragic hero whether he will jump or not. Yet, he chose to jump because his fate was there. The tragic hero gives up the certain for more certain. The hero gives up his present situation and jumps for more certain, in which he is more confident that he has faith in him.
Fear and trembling. Some people think of Christianity as just a personal belief system. People are comfortable with this as long as our personal belief system doesn't affect how we relate to other people. Our personal belief system always affects what we do. This is especially true to Christianity. The Christian faith is meant to be intensely practical. It is meant to impact the way we live. Fear and trembling. He must fear to trust his own strength to withdraw his hand from the hand of Christ or to attempt to walk the Christian pathway alone. Such fear leads to vigilance against temptation, to humility of mind, to taking heed lest we fall. Generally, people are of the option that what faith produces is not a work of art, that it is a course of common work, only for the more clumsy natures. But in fact, this is far from the truth.